Hey everyone, Wags here from Eagle Dynamics. In this DCS AH-64D video, it's time to talk about the AGM-114 Hellfire II missile. There are two primary versions of the Hellfire II, the semi-active laser homing version and the active radar homing version. The radar homing version will come later during early access when we add the Fire Control Radar, or FCR. At release, we'll include the AGM-114K laser version, commonly called SAL. Each AGM-114K weighs 100 pounds, has a tandem, shape-charged, high-explosive anti-tank warhead with a theoretical range of 11 kilometers, but more practically around 8 kilometers. The motor burns for only 2.5 seconds, but it can reach a speed of Mach 1.4. Up to 4 can be loaded on each of the 4 possible Hellfire launchers. There are two principal ways to fire Hellfire: autonomous mode, in which your aircraft is laser designating the target, and remote mode, in which another aircraft or ground asset is laser designating the target on a matching laser frequency.
Alrighty, so let's take a look at Hellfires today. And while we're still here on the ground, we're going to set up the missiles on the missile page. So coming down to the left MPD, we see we're in the top level weapons page. But to use it first, I want to go to the ground override and enable that. Naturally, if we're up in the air, we do not need to do this. So to go to the Hellfire missile format page, we're going to go to B3 missile. And now to select or recall action, the Hellfires will go right on the weapon action switch, or we call the WAS switch. You can see a checkerboard safe, so we'll come up to the armament panel and press on the arm safe button. And now we have an armed up weapon system. So the first thing you're probably going to notice is that this looks a lot like the gun and rocket format page, and indeed it is. The chief big difference here, of course, are these 16 solid green icons, and those are the 16 Hellfire missiles I have loaded up for this little demonstration. In the center we have indications of their status, but actually we DWAS for a second. And when we're DWAS, we have a very basic indication, in this case L for the laser guided version, or the SAL. Let's WAS up again. So when we're WAS, we have a little more detail on the status of each of these missiles. And here's some of the more common ones. So for example, we have LS, L for laser, and S for non-coded. And what I mean by non-coded is that a laser guided Hellfire is going to be programmed to seek out a specific laser code, whether a pulse repetition or a pulse interval. So if it's non-coded, we're going to see an S there. Then we could also see something like AR, BR, CR, and so on. The first letter A in this case is the laser code assigned to that specific Hellfire, so we don't have an S status. And then R, 3 of those are the next 3 in the queue to be launched. The white pulsing one here is actually the next one to fire. If we have a Hellfire ready to go and tracking a target that the Hellfire is seeing the correct code, then we're going to have something like AT, BT, and so on, where again the first letter is the laser code that the Hellfire is looking for, and the T is indicating that it is tracking. At the top we have 3 windows, which again you may recognize from the other weapons. We have our site select, it's TADS in this case. Then we have our arm safe window, and then we have our acquisition source window, in this case waypoint 3. And right below that we have our LRFD, or laser rangefinder designator, and right now it is on code A. And the LRFD, as you may recall, on the TADS we have a laser designator to designate the targets for us, and right now it's set to A. So let's back up for a quick second here. So there's 2 ways we can deliver a laser guided Hellfire. First is called autonomous mode, in which we're going to, essentially it's called self-designate. That will use our TADS to laser designate the target under a specified code, and then we'll have our laser Hellfires set to that same code and search out that target and destroy it. Then we have what's called remote mode. In that situation, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to lob a Hellfire at a known location and point, and we will not designate it. Instead, we'll have a third-party laser designation source, whether it's a JTAC or another aircraft, designating at the code that the Hellfire is looking for and guide that missile in. Now, probably 99% of the time you're going to be using autonomous, and that's what we'll spend most of our time talking about today. So, as you're probably gathering, there's two primary elements of firing a Hellfire. Again, there's the laser designation code, the LRFD, through the TADS, and then there's the code that the Hellfire is going to look for. So let's talk about setting both of those aspects up. So first we have the LRFD, which normally you will not need to change, but let's say if you're in a large multiplayer mission, everyone may be on the same code, say A, so it may behoove you to switch to different codes so no one's stealing your missiles. So to change that, we'll go up to T4 code, and here we see the possible codes that we can select on the left side, right side, and along the bottom. So you can see right now it is assigned to A at a frequency of 1688, which is PRF. At higher frequencies like 4121 at C, that's a PIM, or a pulse interval. So for this example, I'm going to go to Bravo instead at 2111. Also on this page later, we'll set up our LST codes as well. Make that Bravo while we're here. Let's come back, and now we see on our LRFD window, it is now set to a code of Bravo. So that's what we're going to be designated on through our TADS. So again, the second element now is what's the code that the laser seeker in each Hellfire is going to be looking for. And if we're going to do autonomous, we want to make sure that is also set to be. And we have both our priority, alternate, and 3 and 4. And right now our primary, which is the one we're going to be looking for, is on A and not B. So we need to change that. So to do that, we can go up to channel. You're on channel 1. Right now you can see it's set to A. We're going to go to B and come back. And now we can see actually both our primary and alternate are set to B, so we're good to go here. But if we wanted to change the alternate now, say to Charlie, we can do that, and now we have the alternate on C. So right now we can see here that we're good to go for an autonomous attack that we're going to be designating on code B, and our Hellfire is going to be looking for code B. Let's talk about some of the options here on the right side. First we have our type. Right now it is selected to SAL, or semi-active laser. Later on we'll have the option again for the radio frequencies. Coming down we have our mode. This is the method by which we'll cycle to the next Hellfire. In normal mode, it will do it automatically for you based on scheduling. And then if you're a masochist, you can come down to manual and do it yourself. But really no good reason to, just keep it in norm for now. Below that, we have our trajectory. Options are direct, low, and high. And I'm going to be talking about these in a little bit when we start firing some missiles. Then we have terrain, and this is barrier, so it's not applicable here. And then we have our LRFD first and last. And this is going to base our range either on the first reflection or the last reflection of that laser ranging. And let me give you an example here. So let's say we have a vehicle with 2 trees in front of it, and it's between those 2 trees. If we were to designate that vehicle, we would get laser reflection not just off that vehicle, but also off those 2 trees. So in this case, we'd want to set the LRFD to last, so we're actually getting a range off that vehicle. Conversely, let's say that vehicle is in front of those 2 trees. In that case, we want to get the first reflection rather than the last reflection, which would be those trees. So in this case, we set the LRFD to first, like we can see here. And below that, of course, as always, we have our acquisition source, which again is waypoint 3. Okay, so those are the basics of setting up the missile on the multifunction display. Let's take a look at this in action. Okay, so at this point I'm in my battles position overlooking the target area. I'm going to make sure that I'm in direct from R3. And on the TADS we can see we have a broken cross that indicates that the line of sight of the TADS is currently slaved to our acquisition source, which you can see down here as waypoint 2. So let's hit the slave button and deslave so we can actually manually move around our TADS. We can also zoom in my field of view. Some targets. Now because we're daytime, let's go ahead and actually use the day camera this time. So we've got a target here. zoom in a bit more. Yeah, so it looks like we had a pickup truck with a machine gun on the back, commonly called a technical plate. Put the crosshairs just on the base of the target here. So for this first attack, we're going to do a direct trajectory. And it's going to have the most flat of the 3 trajectory options, but it'll get to the target fastest. Is generally what I at least prefer using for close-in shots. Now the big thing about this is, unlike the other 2, we're going to laze and designate the target before we fire the missile, essentially lock on before we launch. And this is called a low ball shot. And to do so, we're going to again line up the task crosshairs over the target, and below and to the right we see this small square, and that's called our missile constraint box. It is not a target designation box that would essentially like overlay the target like you might find in like an S-16 or an F-18 or something like that. Rather, what it's doing is, in direct mode, it's giving us an indication of where the TADS is looking in relation to the nose of the aircraft. So think of it this way. Think of the big cross as the nose of the aircraft, and the little box here is where the TADS is looking. So in this case, you know, we have the crosshairs over the target, so the target is to our right and below the nose. Right now it's solid, so we're actually within constraints to fire the shot in both azimuth and elevation. Usually if you have a constraint issue, it's going to be in the azimuth. In elevation, just like the rocket pods, the Hellfire launchers can articulate up and down. So, but let me move our slew off further to the right. Now we see the box went broken, so at this area we're actually out of constraints now. Let's come back to the left. And over the target. And we also be able to use, you know, your friend in the back seat to align the target, or George will do it for you as well. Next step now, as I mentioned, we're going to laze and designate the target. So again, just like we talked about, we're going to make sure that our LRFD code matches the code that the Hellfire is looking for, in this case, Bravo. Squirt the laser real quick, get a range, 4289, which looks good. Again, so we have the diagonal lines indicating that the laser is active. We have a range of 4289. And now the solid box went large, and that means that the Hellfire missile we have actioned sees the laser reflection in the proper code, which again is Bravo. And also notice we have BT, so Bravo code and T for tracking. We also see we have priority channel selected here, which again, we're in priority channel. Okay, so laser designating. Press, release the trigger, rifle. And you'll see the box go dash for a second, and also missile not ready, just because it's transitioning to the next missile in priority. Good time of flight down here at the bottom, 1 second, and impact. I know that went a bit fast, let's do that one more time. Another target. And base of the vehicle. Okay. We have a good constraint box. It is solid. Lasing, large box. Good return. Rifle. 10 seconds. Four. Impact. Okay, so that's direct for a low ball shot. Now, let's go to either high or low. In this case, we'll go high. And these operate the exact same. The big difference, of course, as you might imagine, is high will have a higher trajectory than low. Now, the nice thing about this is it'll give you a bit more range, but also if you have any obstacles between you and the target, you may be able to clear them that way. It also actually hits the target at a steeper angle, so more of a top attack, which can defeat some armor better. But going against these technicals, we don't have to worry about that so much. Okay, we'll go against this guy here. So we still have our constraint box again, but it's different now. Now, whereas with the direct mode, the constraint box was an indication of where the TAS is looking in relation to the nose of the aircraft. For a high or low, we're going to be doing a low AL shot or lock on after launch that will first fire the missile, and then about 12 to 15 seconds before impact at the time of flight, we'll laze the target. So what we'll be doing is we're going to be firing the missile to a specified location, and to do that we're going to create a point, which is going to go back to what we talked about in the TSD video. So we're going to place the crosshairs over where we want to create that point. We'll laze it, hit the store button. If I go to show, actually just go to attack phase, we can see we created T1 at that location. So let's make that now our acquisition source instead of waypoint 2. So go to chord, T01, and now our acquisition source is T01. We can see that we're still within constraints, but the point we're looking at is off our nose to the left just a little bit. So if we wanted to, we can go ahead and move the nose maybe just a little bit off to the left to bring a little more in center. Looks good right there. So next to the high action display, we see that we're in high trajectory, normal, and our acquisition source is T01. So again, unlike direct, we are not going to laze the target first. Actually, I'll give a quick ranging, just make sure I'm in range, which I thought it would be, 4553. So, rifle, 14 seconds. We're going to go ahead and laze now, a little closer than I expected. Seconds. And hit. Back out. So that's how we do it with the autonomous mode. Now I mentioned we also have the remote option, and it's pretty simple. Again, we'd actually be doing a low AL shot where we would create a target point that we would fire the missile at, and then we'd make sure that whoever is designating once it's in the air knows the code that that Hellfire was programmed to based on the channel selection we set from channel. Okay, so that's how we do Hellfire in the front seat from the CPG. Now let's take a look at it from the pilot seat in the back. Now here in the back seat, I'm going to have to use the front seater to engage the target, so I'm going to be using George. But I'm going to bring up the video page so I can see exactly what he's targeting and the range to this target. So go to TADS, and zoom in a bit. So I'm going to bring up the George interface, but again, it's a topic for another video. I'm having to go to Hellfire. Now have him look where I think the targets are. See, have them engage that. Locked on target. So now I'm centering my flight with the missile constraint box we can see here, and he's ready to fire. I'm in manual mode, so I'll give him the engagement order. Fire. Then he engages automatically. Time. Search. Target. Align my constraint box. Arm target. I'm just waiting for solid. There it is. And permission to fire. You can see from the pilot seat it's much more simple. And hit. So folks, I hope you enjoyed this first look at the Hellfire and both the autonomous, talking about the remote, and how to engage it from either the front seat or the back seat. I'll see you next time.